Sometimes, well, hell yeah. Sometimes it's okay, but not all the time. And they're the only words that seem to have that restriction. I mean, there are a lot of words you can say whenever you want, you know. Pneumonia! Nobody gives you a lot of... All right, you can't yell it in the hospital a great deal, but what the hell? There are words that you can say, no problem. Topography! No one has ever gone to jail for screaming topography. But there are some words that you can go to jail for. There are some words that we just have decided we will not say all the time. Sometimes, okay. If you're running through the jungle chasing somebody that we're at war with, you can holler them. If you're shooting a criminal, it's okay. It's the all-American thing. Dirty fucking crook. But if you're with the bishop's wife at lunch, it's better not to ask for the goddamn lettuce. You know what I mean? It's just like we've decided there'll be some words we won't say all the time. And I was just trying to find out which words they were. For sure, all of them. I wanted a list. Because nobody gives you a list. That's the problem. They don't give you a list. Wouldn't you think it'd be normal if they didn't want you to say something to tell you what it is? Nobody even tells you when you're a kid what the words are that you're supposed to avoid. You have to say them to find out which ones they are. Shit! Oh, fuck! That's two. Oh, Ma, that's enough trial and error, huh? Please, Ma, give me a list, huh? All right, you're 6 years old now, and here's the list of words your dad and I don't ever want to hear you say. Oh, hey, thanks, Ma. Boy, that's gonna save me an ass kicking or two. Yeah, you never know what's gonna be on the list. Because it's always somebody else's list. You didn't make that up. Somebody told you that shit. They told you, better not say that. So you gotta, and you don't know what's gonna be on their list. God, people's lists even change from day to day. Some people on Friday night got a list, you know, about 2 or 3 words. Sunday morning, goddamn, there's 27 words on it. These are the same people 2 days later. Different list. So you gotta kind of watch out what you're gonna believe from them. The trouble is, I was trying to find out what these words might be. And I wanted to know the ones that you could never say on television. I mean the filthy words that are always filthy. There are a lot of these little two-way, double entendre words that have 2 meanings, words that are okay part of the time. I call them like part-time filth. Some of these words, they're only 50% dirty. You have words like ass. Ass is hardly even a dirty word anymore, but it has a few meanings that you can't say on television. That's what I was talking about. What can you say on television? That's another one of those places where we can't use these words all the time. But some of them are all right some of the time. Ass is all right on television. You can say on television things like, well, you've made a perfect ass of yourself tonight. But you can't say, hey, let's go get some ass. Bitch. Bitch is another word like that. Same kind of word. It's only dirty part of the time. Depends on what you mean by bitch. You might be the lady from the San Diego Zoo visiting one of the Tonight shows, and you might just have a bunch of little canines with you there. One of them is a female. You say, there's the bitch, Johnny, and it's okay, fine. Just don't refer to the singer the same way. That's all. Is that bitch going to do another number? Yes. Animals are fine on those two-way words, and that's it. That's what I was trying to find. The words that were always dirty, not just part of the time, but completely filth. Well, in looking for these words, I kept finding new categories. We have so many ways of describing these dirty words. Well, we have more ways to describe dirty words than we actually have dirty words. That seems a little strange to me. It seems to indicate that somebody was awfully interested in these words. They kept referring to them. They called them bad words, dirty, filthy, foul, vile, vulgar, coarse, in poor taste, unseemly, street talk, gutter talk, locker room language, barracks talk, bawdy, naughty, saucy, raunchy, rude, crude, lewd, lascivious, indecent, profane, obscene, blue, off-color, risque, suggestive, cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. That's all I had. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. That was my original list. I knew it wasn't complete, but it was a starter set, you know? Shit, piss, fuck... Yes, WBAI is the one who played them. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. Now, that was the original list. We've added a few words since then. We've added fart, turd, and twat. And I know there are some other words that many of you are wondering about, why they haven't been considered, why they haven't shown up on the list thus far. We're looking at them all very closely. Some of your favorites might make the list this year. Asshole, ball bag, hard-on, piss hard, blue balls, taint, nookie, snatch, box, pussy, pecker, peckerhead, pecker tracks, jism, joint, Donecker, dork, poontang, cornhole, and dingleberry. Dingleberry, a very popular word. And to my way of thinking, dingleberry, a rather innocent-sounding word. Dingleberry sounds Christmassy to me, you know. Let's put one on the tree, Dad.
Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos, and I'm a sociologist at John Jay College here in New York. Throughout history, whenever organized government or social categories has existed, so has political humor and satire. The oldest written example is found in the plays of Aristophanes, who targeted politicians and religious leaders of ancient Greece, remarkably influencing public opinion and increasing public doubt about their power and authority. Watching or reading covert or overt political humor has long been considered one of the best ways to understand a culture and a society. More Americans are turning to late-night comedy shows and political humorists than ever before, not only as entertainment, but as an opportunity to gain political awareness and transformative critiques of an entrenched and established corporate political reality. These political critiques and satires seem to have encouraged viewers, young and old, to become more politically engaged as imaginative and active participants of progressive change. So I'm particularly pleased to welcome on the Radical Imagination today a friend and comrade who's been intimately involved in the radical politics of humor his entire life. It's a visceral and existential commitment that's led him on an incredible life journey. He's been an active member on the comedy circuit, appearing on The Tonight Show at the age of 27. He's run as a candidate for the U.S. Senate in New York in 2010, where he had the support of several actors and comedians, including Seinfeld's co-creator Larry David, Roseanne Barr, and Professor Irwin Corey. He's run as a candidate for governor in 2014 in New York, and for mayor of New York City in 2013 on the tax Wall Street line. He's the former director of the William Kunstler Fund for Racial Justice, a tenacious activist against the drug war, and has been known to dress up as the Greek philosopher Diogenes the Cynic, searching for an honest politician. And he does drop-dead, terrific impersonations, even miming the judge at our Stop, and Frisk trial in 2011, when we met, to everyone's amusement, including the judge. You can listen to him every Tuesday from 5 to 6 on radio station WBAI in New York, where his show is called Live on the Fly. Welcome, Randy Credico, to the Radical Imagination.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
It is.
Thank
I'm glad you made it.
That was a great introduction.
You think so?
One of the longest ones I've
Well, longest, that was short.
Sammy Davis Jr. used to give introductions like that. Yes,
but
he used to have a show, and I used to imitate Sammy Davis Jr. That was very flattering. That was wonderful. It was very nice. You went through my entire life. I think I can go now. No.
Okay, well, I know you've got so many things to do, but we'll keep you for a few minutes. And live on the fly. Now, how did you come up with that?
Well, because it's
what is that about?
I like live radio. Radio is my favorite medium. to be honest with you. I've always enjoyed. It's at WBAI.
But you're a handsome guy. You're on television.
Yeah,
now.
well, I've been on television
You could do this
plenty of times.
Okay.
You know, I'm on your show right now. I've been on the Tonight Show. I've been on Larry King a couple of times. Even that guy on PBS. I forgot his name. Charlie Rose.
Charlie Rose.
Even so,
wow.
yes.
Okay.
And I've been a number of times on Imminent. So.
But radio is your
radio
forte.
is just for me. I like doing radio because of the imagination, and radio, it really has to be good to keep somebody's attention. Where television uses images to subsidize what may not be good audio content. You know, so people like to look, and you can drag things out. Radio, you have to keep like a good baseball announcer. He really has to use language colorfully to keep the audience's attention. And that's the same with live radio. You got to keep people's attention out there. And you can do it with records. That's easy to do, just play a bunch of records. Or if you're doing live political or social content, then it requires good guests, good exchanges, and just a well-produced show. And I've been very fortunate with that.
You have been. I listened to your show yesterday. It was absolutely terrific. And our audience really needs to take a look, to listen to your show.
Yes.
And our show, The Radical Imagination, we're sort of live on the fly here, too, in a sense. So we can compare here, live on the Radical Imagination. Because it is about imagination. It is about words and ideas and conversing and getting into this.
To keep people's attention. So it's live on the fly. It's Tuesday night at this institution in New York City called WBAI, which of course is somewhat on the ropes, but I think we'll get through it. But it's necessary to this city because of its community outreach, and like whether it be 9/11, post 9/11, or during Hurricane Sandy, coordinating with city officials. It's been such a, there are rarefied areas that it touches in various communities in the city that nobody else does. That's why it's a real utility, WBAI. And if it were to falter, it would be a huge loss. You may as well take down the Brooklyn Bridge. All right, seriously, it's got to stay because people will have lost. Like I said, like not having clean air, not having clean water, not having clean listener-supported radio. This is listener-supported,
it's been
not
on for
corrupted.
how many years now?
Well, it started out in 1948. Lou Hill, this anti-war activist, started out in San Francisco, Pacifica Network, and they started KPFA there. Then they're in 5 different cities, and New York started a little bit after that, but it's got a rich history. WBAI. I've been doing WBAI radio since 1980 when I moved here. 84, 85, right?
From California?
Yeah, from California. Las Vegas, actually. I grew up in California. My father ran this huge entertainment complex. He was the co-manager of it. And they had Louis Armstrong. They had Nat King Cole, Ray Charles, Bobby Darin. All the huge stars worked at this place. And it was in the middle of nowhere, 40 miles east of Los Angeles, a little city called Chino, or Ontario. And had a big golf course. And I got to see everybody. Everybody.
So your father was able to get these people?
No, he was the booker. He wasn't the booker. He ran the joint inside.
Ran the joint, okay.
Yeah, so he had the run of the place. And here's a guy who just 20 years earlier did 10 years in prison.
Right.
My dad did 10 years in prison, so it was we're drifting off.
Right?
Yes, safecracker. Yeah. Oh, that's right. 10 years.
Well, you told me while we were
Yes, I did. And so and he was in a, and you're talking about a second generation Italian neighborhood, which are very conservative back in. I mean, we had Sacco and Vanzetti. You did have a progressive anarcho-syndicalist Italian background tradition, but they drifted into. You see it in Howard Beach. You see it in Bensonhurst. More conservative, Little Italy. It's like they're not the Italians of the Garibaldi mindset. Giuliani. Every politician that's Italian, except for Tom DiNapoli, happens to be conservative. And I include Andrew Cuomo in that. Andrew Cuomo in that. He pretends to be a progressive, but if you take a look at it, he's not really that progressive. So.
But back to Chino, just for a minute.
I want to go back to that.
Because I'm interested.
I'm trying to make a line here. So, so I grew up there.
I'm imagining all this.
I grew up there. Here's a guy. I grew up in this kind of, I don't want to say racist, but a clannish Italian neighborhood in Ohio, right? In Cleveland, Ohio. So he does the 10 years in prison, but he's a male nurse in the tuberculosis ward. That's what he did, which was 100% African American. So that experience, and then going out to California, totally changed. I got his DNA.
Why did he go out to California?
He went to California. He worked on, after he got out of prison, he met my mother, and he worked on a boat from Miami to Havana. That's what he was, a cook on the boat, and then he ended up going out there, and somehow, in the late 50s, the economy was pretty good here, and a guy like that could raise 3 kids, which he did, and a stepson, and he had this in his mindset. I went into a neighborhood that was half black, half white in Ontario, or Pomona actually. And all of these entertainers came to our house.
And you were in awe of this. I mean, it's
an
incredible world.
So this is my father. So the bottom line is, take the fact that we had all this great entertainment. There was an entertainer by the name of Rusty Warren. You wouldn't even know.
Oh yeah, the stripper?
No, hypnotist.
No, wait, there was a Rusty Warren stripper?
No, I'm sorry, Rusty Warren was, Pat Collins is the hypnotist. Rusty Warren was the comedian.
See?
And I got to see, you're right, it was the comedian. James Brown worked there, and so did Pat Buttram from Green Acres. He was there, Mr. Haney. And I got to...
That's where you started the impersonations too?
Yeah, no, I started...
How old were you then?
I started... Well, up until I was 14, I started out doing impressions of impressions. I did Nixon when I was 14. I did Jimmy Stewart. I did some back then. And then when I was 17, I worked this little pizza place called Inside Family Pizza. And I got free beer and pizza. And I played with the worst piano player since Edith Bunker. I forgot her name, but God rest her soul, wherever she is. And I would do Jolson. I did Jolson and little Louis Armstrong. Many miles, So I would imitate Jolson there. That's when I started getting the bug of wanting to go in front of an audience. And when I got hypnotized by this, which I didn't. I know I wasn't hypnotized, but you got a room of 1,000 people, and you got 10 on stage. You know that standard routine where they got people doing crazy things. Well, I walked up front as if I was hypnotized, just because I wanted the attention.
Okay.
And so that
you were called up and you played this role.
He just went up there, but I didn't get up on stage. She hypnotized some people in the audience. So I got it. I was cut up at a very early age. Starving for attention all the time. And that's how you have to be psychologically messed up somewhere down the pike to want to get into comedy and put yourself on stage and take the chance of dying and not making people laugh. There's nothing worse than bombing on stage. It's not a feeling that I've experienced that is more enervating, emotionally destructive than dying on stage. And I have many times, especially when I got into Vegas. I worked Vegas. My dad, the whole family moved to Vegas in '72, and I came shortly thereafter, and I had a bigger repertoire of impressions. In '74, I worked at age 19. I was working a club there called the Royal Inn and Royal Inn Casino, and I started working all the lounges over the next 5 or 6 years.
But tell me now, because I'm really interested
in this Las Vegas.
You were doing impersonations. Now, what did you do one after the other? Did you do stories about and characters?
Tell a story with Jimmy Stewart. That would be an
forever.
easy. Well, it'll take you forever to do that, I would tell stories. You just have routines. You do Nixon, My Fellow Americans. I forgot the routines I did back then. Red Fox, Carol O'Connor. You just you develop some kind of routine. And then I ran into Mort Saul. I ran into Mort Saul at the Hilton Hotel because my best friend in Vegas at that time was the tennis pro at the Hilton. So I got to meet Cosby back then, and Cosby took me out to dinner one day because I was this great crack impressionist, And then I run into Mort Saul. Mort Saul was married to one of the Kim sisters, which was a trio that worked the lounges. A lot of trios back then. Vegas was great in the 70s. It stinks now. I can't stand it anymore. It's just become like Disneyland. But back then it was great. When the mob ran it, instead of the corporate mob on Wall Street. But when the mob actually ran it, it was much better and much more relaxed.
But explain to our audience, Mort Sahl was
something
different then. This
is
in the late,
Mort Sahl was,
when was this now? Early 60s?
No, I was 1975. I met Mort Sahl.
Okay.
And
first real political satirist,
He
right?
worked. Here's a political satirist, not the real modern day, yes, but you got Will Rogers and you got Mark Twain. You have a lot of others. There's this woman, I can't think of her name right now, who's a political satirist, but there were political satirists. Dick Gregory, great political.
Absolutely.
He worked my father's club as well.
Really?
I've had him on my radio show 5 or 6 times, and I had his book when let me get back to that.
He's still going strong.
Well, he was on. He's been great. I got his book, and I don't want to say the name of it because it's the N-word, right?
Yeah. Well,
so I took that. I was reading that book when I was, I think, in 6th grade, and I happened to take it to school with me in my bag, and somebody saw me reading it. I got suspended for reading. I told them that story, but I was actually a big fan of his early on. That book did like a number.
Really impressed you.
Great, and so getting back to Mort Sahl. So Mort Sahl, I had known. I'd seen him many times. He had a show with George Putnam called Both Sides Now, big on the Kennedy case because he worked with, did the briefs with Jim Garrison in the Kennedy case. And when that film first came out, the Zapruder film, he unveiled it on his show when it was public. And they kept showing it with this guy, Robert Vaughn was one of the guests, the guy from... yes, that's
Detective
it.
story show.
Robert Vaughn was with Napoleon.
Secret Agent or something.
Napoleon Solo. Yes, whatever it's called. But
all right.
So I know the music, but I just can't think of the name of the show. Now, it's great music, by the way. So that happened. Mort Sahl, a big fan of his, and so I went up and started talking to him at the Hilton. And like I said, he was Baron Hilton's favorite act. And here's a guy who's a left-winger, and he's working the Vestal Virgin Lounge at the Hilton, the old Hilton, and it was great. You'd have Elvis in the main room.
Really?
You have Cosby in the main room with Donnie and Marie in the main room. You know, they would.
And who's the audience? Give us who's the audience here?
I don't know. I'm talking about with in the lounge with him. I don't know. But I'm talking, in the main room, you'd have people come from all over. Are you kidding? Everybody came to Vegas then. They still do. But in the lounge, it was Mort, and he did the same act. He'd go up to the newspaper, and he did the same act, basically. So...
were you politicized then? Were you consider
yourself because my cousin radicalized. My cousin was an SDS speaker. Yes, I was. Yes, my cousin was big. I was radicalized when I was back early by my cousin Ken, who was a union organizer and SDS speaker. He brought Jane Fonda on. He got drafted. He became a draft dodger. Then he got found. He smoked a joint. They arrested him, and they said, "You got to go." And so he had to join, and he radicalized his entire platoon. So you got pictures of Angela Davis inside his barracks, right? So because of that. Now, Mort Sahl wasn't as radical. In fact, he's become very conservative right now. He supported Alexander Haig in 1988 for president. Okay. So he and I talked a lot. He saw me reading a book called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, and he made this joke to me. He said, "Bury my heart at Joe Namath's knee," right? So now, he sees me on television with his local show called the Forrest Duke Show. And it was me and the Kim sisters and somebody else. I had a couple of people had their local shows there, writers, Forrest Duke and Joe Delaney were big supporters of mine. They were the two entertainment writers for the Las Vegas Sun and the Review-Journal. And he sees me walking around the tennis courts. And he says to me, "What are you doing these impressions for? I mean, you're not making any sense. You're boxed in just doing these impressions." He says, "You should be start reading the paper more, blah, blah, blah." So because of that, I became more focused on political stuff and political impressions. This is about 76 when I started doing that. But I still had the Red Fox in my act. I had the Carol O'Connor's, Archie Bunker in it. I had the Peter Falk. You know, I hate to bother you shit, but that's the kind of stuff I would do back then. You know what I mean? I would do Bogart. The key was not imaginary. Gregory Peck, James Mason, you name it, I did all of those. And there we go into Richard Nixon, Hubert H. Humphrey. I saw Hubert H. Humphrey. And I got back, I started putting in political impressions going into 78, 79.
At his encouragement. Otherwise, maybe you wouldn't have turned that way.
I went out and got more political books. I got this one book on that really was a key book for me to read. And that was the transcript from the Chicago 7, Chicago 8 trial on Kunstler. And I just looked at it, I read it, and I said, my God, I got to meet this guy. This is the funniest guy. I laughed out loud reading what Bill Kunstler was saying in that courtroom. I mean, and it never left my head that this guy, this is some great stuff. His antics, and it's not, you don't hear it, you're just reading it, and you know what he's saying, and his tone of saying it.
And his co-star there in this is Abby Hoffman, one of the greatest.
Right. Well, that leads to the story. Okay. That leads to the story of, and I'm going to jump ahead here. Okay. Right, because I got booted out of Vegas basically because I got too political. 1980.
Not because of the Kim sisters.
I worked. No. I worked all around. I worked Reno, Tahoe. I worked in reviews. I worked with everybody. Opposite them, I met Urban Corey in 77. I met David Fry there. I met all of these people there. And
who did Nixon, too.
Yeah, he did the best Nixon.
The best Nixon.
He did the Nixon.
And Von Meter. How about Von Meter?
Well, he got under Jim Acata back then. That was a young Jim Acata and an old Jim Acata. It's hard to keep up with impressions because their voices are always changing. It's like Walter Brennan. If you look at him when he was young, he was in those movies with Gary Cooper, and then he got a little bit older, and he got a little bit higher, like even he did Rebel Coins.
And hobbling along.
Yeah. So
wait, did this come naturally to you? Did you really have to work?
Yeah, no,
it came naturally.
Some voices were easier than others. George C. Scott, Americans love.
So you're blessed.
Sting of Battle, and of course Reagan was tailor made for me. I just I just was good at it for some reason. I don't like to spend the time. Rudy Giuliani, when I moved to the city, was wonderful for me. But I'll tell you, I did Dangerfield. All right, I started work. So I left Vegas. I left Vegas after this terrible incident where it's in the documentary on me by Jack Black called 60 Spins Around the Sun. You couldn't even play that. You could actually look that up and see the scene in there that cost me a huge contract in Las Vegas. It's in the documentary, 60 Spins Around the Sun, which is on Netflix, but now I think it's on YouTube as well. So you can get that, and you can see exactly this pivotal point in my life. And it got me into New York. And
you don't mind if I pull you back to some things, like Kunstler here.
I'm going to get to Kunstler.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I get to Kunstler. Now, one of the last places I worked in Vegas besides that, I worked the Sahara Hotel in all of these reviews, the Sahara Casbah Lounge. That's where I worked. I worked there with everybody.
So
all of these people,
time.
Yes. Even Wayland Flower and Madam, Wayland and Madam, and then you had the Unknown Comic worked there. Smothers Brothers. We had a thing called the Monday night showcase at the Sahara. Started upstairs in Donda Beachcomber with the Dick Smothers. He was up there. And Peter Anthony and Peep Our Beauty, all these great comics you don't know, Jackie Gale, they all influenced me. These were lounge comics. We do 6 shows a night. I worked the Hacienda, I worked the Dunes, I worked the lounges there, and you had to do 5 or 6 shows a night. It was very difficult because sometimes you'd have the same people at the slot machines if it was an open lounge. Casbah was a closed lounge at the Sahara. That was the greatest lounge ever. Rickles started there. That's where Rickles started, back in the 50s. May he rest in peace. He just died. And so many others worked inside this room. It was great. What was the name of it? Rip Taylor worked there. All right? Rip Taylor with the confetti. Yes, big mustache. These are great moments in my life because I really miss those days.
So everybody under 50 in our audience here has they have to look up all these names. You'll have a ball. These are
did you
geniuses.
See the movie Casino? You know the movie Casino? I did that. I was a regular on that guy's show. I did bumpers for the guy that Robert De Niro played. All right? Did you see Casino? All right? Frank Rosenthal was his name. And I was right in. He owned it, but he couldn't say he owned it, so he wouldn't give him a gaming license. He was tied with him with the mob. He was their front guy. And so there's a joke going around in Las Vegas saying, I got a job working for Frank Rosenthal. I make $100,000 a week. All I got to do is start his car. You know what I mean? Because they tried to bump him off a few times. Now, so I did bumpers with Urban Corey, actually, for the Frank Rosenthal show. It was a sports show, and he became the entertainment director. Didn't know a thing about it, but that was his vehicle back in that didn't necessitate a gaming license, right? So he couldn't get one. And you know who was the one that denied him it? Harry Reid, who was on the Nevada Gaming Commission back then, young 30-year-old man. So Mormon.
So you saw a lot of the inner workings of sort of a ruthless politics behind the scenes.
Sinatra got one though. Some cop told me, some cop there, that I knew, undercover cop, told me that that Sinatra had his black bag when he was going before the Gaming Commission. He finally got the license, and he opined that black bag was full of $100 bills going to Harry Reid. All right, so nothing surprises me. Everything's corrupt, and you got these land deals. You see a lot. If you own land in Vegas in the early days, and then you own the zoning commission, the county commissioners, and then you rezone everything. That land goes up 100-fold.
The mob controlled it, right?
Yes, so the mob controlled it. A fellow by the name of Herb Kaufman did. All the people in the county commission, were, I don't want to say corrupt, but they certainly were malleable when it came to cash. So that was back then. This is now. Now going back to the Vegas thing,
right?
And then how I catapulted into New York.
That's a big
right. Yeah. So my uncle owned some cruise ships in Florida. He owned some cruise ships in Florida. Big CIA guy. He got out and he had no kids. I was like his kid. I didn't meet him for a long time now. This is an uncle that was from Ohio that went to Florence, studied, and then he went to Buenos Aires and did
I got to ask, what was your mother like?
My mother was very hardworking, just a hardworking woman. Grew up in northern Florida. Met my father, who was this slick guy from the north, and she was
very stable, sort of a.
Yeah, she was great. She's just hardworking, hardworking all of her life. Very good. Yes, I love. Yeah. She died.
Loved
in 96.
you, spoiled you here and there.
Yeah, definitely spoiled me. She's harder working than me. I got in the show business. She worked 40 hours a week all of her life. You know, she just was a workaholic. She just could not work. She had to be busy. So. At any rate, yes, it was a tough. It was. Listen, she was a hick, not a hick, but coming from, this rural area in northern Florida. You know, Florida is the further north you go, geographically, the further south you go, philosophically. It's like more. You're next to Georgia and you're next to Mississippi.
Right.
So it was more urbane and urban in Miami. It was a little more progressive until the Cubans came, obviously. So
you're on the boat now with the uncle.
I'm on the boat.
Your uncle wants you
I got on the boat. I got on the boat. I worked the boats in 1980, Scandinavian Sea Escape, and then I got thrown off the boats. All right. Okay. I worked strip joints. After I left Vegas, I worked strip joints, and I got a boat to New York. It was Scandinavian. It went from the Bahamas up to New York and back, and I got off the boat, and it was just like coming across like my great-grandfather did from Italy in 1896 on the King Wilhelm boat from not Sicily but from Naples. That's where there was the boat they brought in the immigrants, it was not my great-grandfather, my grandfather and my great-grandfather. So I never got to meet him. I came here and then I started working around, and I loved New York. I met this character here by the name of David Heenan. David Copperfield was his pseudonym, and I worked Dangerfields. Rodney, I love this guy, you know. So I worked there for years.
East side, right?
I worked 61st and First Avenue. But it was a tough place to work. It really was. A tough place to work. Red Fox worked there. I got along great with him. He always, and Jackie Mason, I got to know really well back then. And then 83, 84, I got my big break. I moved over to Catch a Rising Star. I was the last person to audition for The Tonight Show. And I was the only one doing political humor. The guy saw 35 acts that night. I was the only, and I wasn't a regular at Catch a Rising Star. And I was the only guy, Jim McCauley, may he rest in peace, chose to do The Tonight Show. This is October. I did it in October of 84. And it was because my uncle, who I met, I was dead broke. I was completely dead broke, and this rich guy with the boat gave me like $10,000 to keep at it and keep at it until I developed my act. And then I said something on the show that really pissed him off after that. He never forget.
Johnny Carson.
On Johnny Carson, yeah. It's in the documentary. I'm not going to get into that because it take too much time.
Right.
But he got all upset with what I did on Tonight Show.
You called the UN ambassador.
UN ambassador. I called her basically, and you look at, yes, I called her, I compared her to Eva Braun, Hitler's spouse. Now, late spouse. And may she not rest in peace. No, so, all right, so that's what happened then. But I got Tonight Show. I did Tonight, and then in '85, my old friend that I knew in Las Vegas, Joey Heatherton. All right, I've got a picture of it. It's in the documentary too. I knew her from Vegas. She worked at the Sahara. She came to see me. Yes, she was in the main room with Johnny Carson. I used to see Carson all the time, right? And then she'd come in the lounge, and I got to know her really well. Well, she had about 90 problems happening. 90, it was at a place on the Upper West Side called Columbus, on Columbus.
She was absolutely gorgeous.
No, she was absolutely gorgeous, but she had gone through, at that point, legally, she had like 5 or 6 outstanding charges against her, and she was on the lam. So I take her in to my apartment, because she can't stay in hers, on 106th Street. And not only that, I call up. She's telling me about her problems. She's looking for a lawyer. She doesn't have any disposable cash. So I go to the Gramercy Park Motel with her to have a drink, right? They had a great bar. I don't know if they still do. They had a great bar. And I kept calling up Kunstler, and I got the phone machine. I said, oh, this is a great opportunity. I called up Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was going to get me a lawyer in Las Vegas. Everybody wanted money, and I kept asking around. I'm name dropping a lot, but it's
you're
okay.
doing this altruistically
to
help a poor gal
but the thing is,
out of trouble,
this
right?
fortuitous moment, me wanting, going back to Mort Saul, having me go out and read more, reading the book on Kunstler in my mind, and now I've got to meet Kunstler. I got an opportunity. I used this. This was my opportunity. I'm very opportunistic. I
can understand why you use it.
So I called up, and I got the answer machine. So the next day, I tried again in the afternoon. I called up. I said, this is Randy Credico. I left a message. Come right down. Kunstler gets on the phone. Come down immediately. So they developed this great friendship. He got her off on every charge, every single charge. And there was one moment there when the paparazzi was all around. And the star, I got an interview with the Inquirer. All right, so they're interviewing, taking pictures. I said, wait a second, Bill. I just met a woman from the Star outside. She was going to give me $15,000 if I would get the interview with her instead of the National Enquirer. So I go back inside, and I tell this to Bill, and he says, well, when I mentioned the $15,000, he says, well, maybe we should take a look. And then the National Enquirer says, no, we're going to pay for this exclusive. So it was an exclusive in the National Enquirer, a big exclusive, pictures with him. Then after that, like I said, he got her off, and
you established a relationship with him.
And I with Bill Kunstler, he and I became, and Abby Hoffman was in the scene at that time. We did a fundraiser for Abracadabra over there on Christopher and Gay Street. It was really fascinating. I got to smoke pot with Abby Hoffman and Bill, and then I started hanging out with him. I drove him around the courthouses with Lynn Stewart. We drove out. He'd go out to Trenton. He did all these different cases, and it was amazing. I traveled around with him for the next 10 years. The year that he died, he and I went to California in January of '95. Went to California on his book tour. So because he was sick, and his wife said, you got to keep an eye on him. So I did, and guess what? I got sick in San Francisco because of that weird air. And I got sick, and he took care of me.
What do you mean?
The JDL was pelting him with it was really in San Francisco with the sometimes
the fog or
no, it's just windy, and sometimes if it's you might catch a bug, and I did, and he took care of me. In Seattle, I was sick. He took care of me in Seattle.
Now we have a very perceptive audience, but you're traveling through years and decades of fasting. JDL, Jewish Defense League, was after Kunstler was angry at Kunstler.
Yes, they were angry with him because, a variety of reasons. He got that one guy off. This is
you're coming back. We're going to do another show because this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how much. I mean, look, we're not even where we were supposed to start.
I know. That's
we're not even talking about local stuff here.
I know.
So, but with the Kunstler thing, he was just so
appreciative.
No, he's so. the guy was bigger than life.
Yeah,
and people loved him. You go out to
was the real
courthouses and African Americans. They knew he was the real deal.
He was. Right.
He was the real deal. I would go up to Schomburg Center with him, and everybody knew. You know what Al Sharpton said. I didn't know that Bill Kunstler wasn't black. All right, so he was really good. The race thing was his thing, and that's I ended up running the. Now we're going way forward. After we died, I started running the William Kunstler Fund for Racial Justice for 10, 15 years. But during those years with Kunstler,
black lawyers too, right? C. Vernon Mason.
Yes, C. Vernon Mason was his partner at one point. They were never.
Ron Kuby was
an associate.
Groomed.
Yes, Ron Kuby got it, but he's a very good lawyer. But Bill Kunstler is just. There's something about him. He was a Renaissance man. I mean, this guy's a World War II hero. World War II hero. It's a great story that Lenny Weinglass told about when he went back. Some guy tried to kill him when they were in the Philippines. A Japanese soldier and an aide-de-camp like
Kunstler. Okay.
Yeah, almost got. So he had a big scar.
Keep up with you here. All right, we're doing it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he also took what do they call a goiter? It got one of these things, took a book and smashed it.
A goiter, I thought.
Yes.
Goiters.
No, it was something here. There was like one
something
of these things.
Here? Okay.
Yes, a big lump. And he said, I thought it was a goiter. He went, boom, and it went away.
Oh.
And
in the Philippines.
He was in the Philippines. The guy almost killed him. Aide-de-camp killed the Japanese soldier. They occupied Japan a few months later. He takes the soldier's wallet to his wife. Your husband died a hero. In Japan.
So that was the sort of guy he was.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
We're
having
really
Kuby on next week, by the way. So
he's good. He's
carry on with
I guess you can. Don't. But Oh, you're going to have him on. Well, he's good. I spent a lot of time with him and Bill back then. It was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun.
But again,
he did a lot of hard work. I got to tell you something.
So you did
a lot of hard paperwork there.
Yeah, and so your political skills were really being honed now by the best.
Being around him, but again, and that's what really helped me, because he tried things in the court of public opinion as much as he did in the courtroom. He had a comedic flair about him.
He did.
That could satirize the situation, and that totally inspired me. And that's why when I became an activist, when I became strictly an activist, I left the comedy for a long period of time. Only benefits I would do. I would do benefits, but I couldn't take the road anymore. I just couldn't be. It was like working at Chuck E. Cheese. It was like hanging out in a pool hall past the age of 16. You can't hang out in the pool hall. And that's what comedy clubs were. They weren't satisfying for me. But using my skills as a comic for my activism, that's where it really paid off.
Sort of like Abby Hoffman in a sense.
And in Red Buttons, I didn't tell you how Red Buttons got me. Yeah, Red Buttons, a very progressive, radical guy. Yes, Red Buttons. I worked in Reno. I'm trying. I got to put this chapter in here. In this, how I got to New York. Okay. Red Buttons was working in Reno in a show with Eddie Bracken. Eddie Bracken was this guy who worked a lot of Preston Sturges films. Okay. And they were working in a show together. I had known Bracken because he did Hello Dolly with Carol Channing just a few months earlier, so I got to meet him. Then he came back in a review in the big room in Reno called Comedy USA or something. So I used to go to a Mexican restaurant every night with Red Buttons because he was having an affair with one of the dancers in the show. So from there, we talked politics, and the guy was like, as far left as you can get.
Really?
And then in November of 1980,
so it never came out in
November
his work,
1980,
did it?
not really.
No, not
November
really.
1980, Reagan won that landslide, and Bracken, who was friends with Nancy Reagan and friends with Ronald Reagan, he was a conservative New York song and dance guy, and they would argue politically, but we all got along, and because of that loss, Red Buttons he was crying. He says they got all the rope now. The Reagan and those people got all the rope because they lost the Senate. They lost everything, right? They lost the Senate. Frank Church, all these guys who disappeared. And so I said, he said, really? And so Red was really upset about that. And so was I. And lachrymose, okay, if I can't think of a better word than that. So
Careful.
I see him a couple of years later, and I think must have been 82. at George Burns's 90th birthday party, or maybe it's 90-something birthday, 82, yeah, 90th birthday party in Atlantic City. And Red was there, and I said, Red, well, have they pulled the rope?
Yeah.
He says, they have pulled the rope. They have pulled the rope.
So what you're saying is so very important. A lot of these comedians, maybe like you too, felt like this was as far as they could go with the material, and needed something more.
Yeah.
And you did that.
Right.
And do you see that happening with some of the younger people
No,
coming
well,
up
if you
today?
look at the television stuff,
What's going on today?
There's some very good ones. Barry Crimmins is a great guy.
Okay.
You're not going to get on television. He's not going to host. What's going on today is they don't understand. A lot of these guys don't understand it, or they have to work within parameters. If they're going to just do all Russia stuff, this may as well be working for the CIA when it comes to Trump. There's stuff on Trump domestically with the immigration, with Sessions, and the renewal of the drug war, with private prisons. There's so much stuff going on domestically that our minds are being taken to this phony Russian thing of collusion. That's not what beat Hillary Clinton. It is what Bernie Sanders said. The Democratic Party lost the election. The Republicans didn't win it. And he was right when he said that.
And you're a supporter.
I was a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I did a 48-hour marathon. I nearly died for him with comics. All right, and I did the Left Forum this year, and I did my comedy show there. So I do those things. But when you look at the late night stuff, if it's just going to be on the foibles, on the edges of the politicians, the headline hunting,
what's allowed, what's not?
Let's
say Colbert.
Let's say Colbert. Colbert's not going to go that deep and get into policy. I mean, are you going to explain it? Why not talk about Saudi Arabia and what they're doing right now? Let's talk about these massive immigration raids by ICE. That's what they should be talking about, and find humor in that instead of being distracted by this Russia thing. Even if it's collusion, there's no law against somebody helping out. We're involved in 88. You go to Chile, you go to Nicaragua. They try to. I was in Nicaragua. That's the next time I'm on. Talk about my 4 years, 5 years helping out the Sandinistas. That, you know, the U.S. involvement in the 75 coup, the Velvet coup in Australia, and the CIA's involvement with Lumumba, and you just go around the world.
No
you go down to Argentina.
That sort of political satire today, right?
Listen.
Look, Dick Gregory.
That's what they should be
left
talking
Hollywood
about.
Not decades ago, too.
Saudi Arabia right now.
All right.
Saudi Arabia and what they're doing in Yemen. I mean, let's talk about that. I'm tired of people talking about Russia all the time.
Bill Maher, a little bit, no?
Bill Maher.
A little bit. Gets into some of the stuff you're talking about?
Bill, a little bit.
More than most, right?
Yeah, but he's not totally good, you know.
Well,
he's not totally good.
But he's
totally
as out there as
far as HBO can go. You know, Carlin went much deeper on this. But these people that are distracted by this whole Russian thing, and nobody cares about the Russia thing. I don't know. It's not going to put food on the table. It's not going to clear up the asthma in the Bronx.
Carlin really, the last several years, really
got radical.
Really became very radical.
Yeah.
And Lenny Bruce and stuff.
He did.
Well, man, we have 5 minutes. You've got to get downtown, don't you? And we promised.
Well, you got 5 minutes left.
We got 5 minutes left. Tell us about your show that we need to see, because you're doing the sort of work and the activism and the humor.
Accurately describe the political comedy scene today.
Okay.
I can tell you the late night stuff. Okay. The late night stuff, I call it headline hunting. Okay. They're really not going to go deep into it. They're going along with suddenly the CIA and the FBI are heroes to the Democratic left. They're heroes to the Democratic left. It's just amazing that they're banking on yes, Trump is horrible. Do you think it was going to be, how much better do you think it was going to be under Hillary? Yes, there would be probably less of ICE raids, but we would be supporting this brutal, vile government of Saudi Arabia, which is wreaking so much havoc in the Mideast right now. They're the ones. She would be in Afghanistan. 16 years we've been in Afghanistan. Why aren't they talking about that? In Iraq, we killed 1 million women and children.
That's right.
And then 500,000 by Hillary Clinton's husband, Bill Clinton. 500,000 people died. We're almost at war with China right now. We're about to go to war with China. We surrounded them with 400 concrete and lily pad bases around China. And we're talking about the so-called nut in North Korea. Well, look, China's got a reason to be worried about us with this guy. And even if he wasn't, these are policies that are set by the military-industrial complex and the generals that run their water.
And you're also doing quite a series now with Julian Assange.
With Julian Assange, 10-part series I just did with Julian
10 part.
Assange. Yes, with some of the greatest people in the world. Craig Murray, former ambassador, the UK to Uzbekistan, who discovered torture. I've had John Pilger on, one of the greatest journalists of all, the best by far. Look at his documentaries on johnpilger.com. Unbelievable, best writer of them all. So he knows about, he liked my documentary, by the way, because he thinks the state of satire in the U.S. blows. All right, but he gave me a compliment because he saw the documentary. But I've had so many great guests. I've had this lawyer from Guatemala on a couple of weeks back, Renata Avila. She was brilliant, and so many great people associated with Julian Assange. He is a publisher. He's a publisher, and the CIA does not want his stuff out there. They don't want the stuff coming on about Iraq, about killing civilians. They don't want the stuff coming out about Honduras, about that woman Berta who was murdered and they got rid of that coup down there. They don't want you to know about that. That's it. That's why they call him, he doesn't have First Amendment rights. What? What? And all of these journalists, these so-called journalists, these mannequins that are on CNN and MSNBC who are there carrying the intelligence community water should be ashamed of themselves. At WBAI, we're able to get, just like you can here.
Yeah.
You can here. You're not dependent on some kind of finances.
If anything, you should be so proud of. You've carried on with unbelievable tradition, unbelievable. I can see why you've named the show Live on the Fly, because that represents what you've done here. You put it together in a way that very, very few people do.
Puts you under a lot of pressure when you're doing it live. You know that. It really does put you under a lot of pressure. And so it's a challenge.
It is.
And I'm not good. I see you're good at taping here. I'm not good at I had somebody on the other day, an Australian senator, who I had to pre-record because he was in
Green Party, right?
Yeah, the Green Party is actually a senator, man. The Green Party is much bigger there than it is.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a huge party there.
Exotic.
You know, so this guy was great, and he was here for the anti-nuke conference, and I got him in and did 40 minutes.
We got 30 seconds again.
It was a pleasure being here. I'm glad I'm going to be late to my haircut. It wasn't
you look terrific anyway. You don't need.
I'm going to cut it myself. Here.
You can
I'm going to wear a hat tomorrow when at the.
Why don't you? At the press conference.
No, I mean like the one that was on 2 weeks ago. Actually, right.
Randy, I'm so glad that you made the show
Jim,
today.
it was a pleasure.
It really was, and we want to have you back as soon as you can make it.
I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about what we were supposed to talk about.
That's why we're going to have you again.
You know, we got stuck up at the night in the San Denises. I got to tell you the stories. I got to do my Reagan stuff and do your U.S. Embassy.
Do your Reagan stuff. Thank you, Randy, so much.
Remember the words of George Bush, who said, "God bless America. America is the greatest nation in the land."
There you go.
He actually said that. Right.
Yeah, and got his master's at
How
Harvard.
about my Bloomberg? You ever Bloomberg? We got to go.
We got to go. We'll save Bloomberg for later. Thank you, Randy, so very, very much, and thank you all. This is Jim Vrettos, and we'll see you next week on The Radical Imagination.
Your days are numbered. We are the second American Revolution. We are winning. Yippee!
Dear Abby, you're my kind of revolutionary. We'll levitate the Pentagon. We promise you we'll carry on. Dear Abby, thanks for teaching us we love.
Revolution for the hell of it.
That was one of the biggest slogans in the 60s. Just say no was the slogan. I'll show you the shirt hasn't been changed in 25 years. Just say no to dorks like Bork. Just say no to student apathy. Just say no to apartheid in South Africa. Just say no to 34 million people living below the poverty level. Just say no to 3 million homeless people. Just say no to $270 million in contra aid. Just say no to lying, stinking presidents who act like presidents but are not presidents in fact.
Our motto is, ask not what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you.
But when we went south, and by the end of 1965, because a lot of people, a lot of young people in particular, and I'm not talking about the Peloponnesian Wars now, this ain't ancient history. All of you was walking and breathing on the planet. This was 1965 I'm talking about. And we went down there, and a lot of people like us went, and a change was made, and legal segregation, apartheid, that has stood in the South for 200 years, was brought to its knees, and the South, in spite of all the problems that it still has changed, and a change was made because people gave a damn.
And there's a new nation, right here, we are, a new nation. Love it or leave it, we have left.
Above all, what you have as young people that's vitally needed to make social change is impatience. You want it to happen now. There have to be enough people that say, we want it now in our lifetime. We want to see apartheid in South Africa come down right now. We want to see the war in Central America stop right now. We don't want the CIA coming on our campus right now. We don't want sexual harassment in our communities right now. I refuse to live in a world that does not have hope. Therefore, no quiero vive en el mundo sin Nicaragua libre. I do not care to live in a world without a free Nicaragua. Thank you. We were young. We were reckless. We were headstrong. We were impatient. We were excessive. But God damn it, we were...